I met Lilah Clay in 2006. Hard to believe that that's already over 7 years ago. Time flies when you're having fun writing books. Back then, Lilah was working on her first novel, and she sent me a few chapters which, as I recall, I thoroughly savaged. Cut out half the adjectives, write shorter sentences, get to the point faster, don't overdo dialect or be too clever with dialogue, be more careful with the construction of sentences, work harder to say exactly what you want to say, and don't dawdle or be lazily imprecise, and so forth ad infinitum. Quote, writing accurately and well and with rhythm is really difficult, I pontificated, let alone figuring out the Chinese puzzle structure of a good novel. Of course, the reason I can give everybody else very good advice is that I very seldom follow it in my own work. In fact, 7 years ago, I hastened to add to Lilah that I'm a writer who suffers from 1,000 faults myself, and more than half the books I've written have never been, nor ever will be, published, thank God. So I sort of know whereof I speak. What was clear to me back in 2006 was that Lilah had the moxie and the talent, and if she just kept writing, built a body of work, and never got discouraged by criticism, her future would be bright indeed. At the time we met, Lilah also gave me some of her short essays to read, and I really liked them. The essays were only a few pages long, but I admired each of them greatly. They were tough, they had an in-your-face, ironic, edgy, sardonic, often humorous voice. To me, they were young, powerful, and distinctive. I'd love one day to read a whole book of them, and I'm certain I will, because Lilah has a manuscript of them now. Soon after I met Lilah, she moved away from Taos, and she wound up in Hawaii on the island of Maui, where she now resides. Lucky her. This past winter, I almost called her up and begged her to let me come and unfurl a sleeping bag on her floor for a couple of months. If I could only get on an airplane without having a complete nervous breakdown, I might actually have made that call. Lilah's a worker. Since I last saw her, she's completed her 4th manuscript, a novel, The Book of Wind and Stone. Another recent novel, written for young adults and called At the Edge, received high praise from the 2008 Amazon Breakthrough Novel Award. And her memoir, Tiger in My Ribcage, is a powerful story of trying to overcome a long, lethal, chronic illness. To boot, Lilah is a literary and performance poet, an ongoing guest speaker in creative writing classes at the University of Hawaii's Maui College. Her roots lie in slam and hip-hop poetry. She's a fine rapper, and I know that because I saw her on the internet in action. Her poems have been published in numerous literary journals, including World Literature Today, Splash of Red, and Her Circle. Tonight, I believe she plans to read from a completed manuscript of poems written over the year between the summer of 2011 and the summer of 2012. That collection is entitled Tonight the Wind Rebels. To me, Lilah has chutzpah and an inner drive that's engaging, no nonsense, compassionate, and right on. She also has youth, determination, and a bright future that didn't just come to her because she's gifted. She's really struggled for it. She has earned her way. I'm very happy to see her again in Taos and proud to introduce her to you all. I consider her a comrade in arms. One final thing that Lilah and I share is that we're both half French. My mom died in 1942, but Lilah's mom, Solange, is alive and well and living in Taos, though, sadly, she's soon headed for Berkeley, California, where I'm told the winters, like the winters in Hawaii, are not so cold. So, at age 72, I must admit, I'm already planning to phone Solange and beg her to let me unroll my sleeping bag on her Berkeley floor, because means I can take a train. I won't have to get on it. Finally, before I turn the evening over to Lilah, I'd like to remind you all of the Taos City Code, Section 8, subparagraph B, which states, quote, "Anybody who attends a public meeting or performance and fails to turn off their cell phone beforehand shall be hanged by the neck until dead." Mon fin, bref, messieurs, dames, je voudrais bien vous présenter ma chère amie et une femme écrivain extraordinaire, Lilah.
You can come to Hawaii with your sleeping bag.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to see you all here. So many familiar faces. And the people I haven't met yet, I hope you'll stick around and introduce yourselves at the end of the evening. So, this collection of poetry, Tonight the Wind Rebels, I spent a year writing a poem a day after finishing my second book. And I thought, what did I think? I thought just to put together this collection, I sorted through all the hundreds of poems and picked like my 36 best. And the book is in 3 chapters, by sun, S-U-N, by blood, and by moon. And a bit of them reflect coming out of a long, dark illness. I was chronically ill for a good solid 10 years, and I know I look good and I'm so much better now, but I really had to earn it. It was like going into death for old people, but because I'm young and resilient, I got to come out of it. So some of these poems might be a little heavy, but it's okay, because this is a part of life, and it's a kind of a beautiful kind of heaviness, because shedding the old skin, and I'm happy to be here with you all this evening. So the first, and you can just save your applause to the end if you feel like clapping. There'll be plenty of poems to go through. So again, the first chapter is by sun. And the first poem is called A Cloud. And if any of you feel like closing your eyes to listen to the poems, that's fine, as long as you don't snort. All right, A Cloud. Like hawks, the moths circle me in pairs, waiting for the sweet, wet scent of my light to pour into their beings. But I am not fire today, not stone or water, not air or salt. Today I am just a cloud hovering, like a baby soul over lovers waiting to be born. This next poem was the first poem I got published, and I just mention it because after 13 years of writing, 2.5 books in, I had this whole idea of what it would be like to be a successful writer, and that didn't happen, and I forgot I'm young and ambitious and I have these big dreams, and so I had to kind of do my writing career backwards and then start sending out the individual poems. And so, and hanging out with John is so good because he takes my dreams away from me in a good way with that kind of harsh reality. Like, it is possible, but it's a lot more work than I could ever anticipate. So, this poem is called To Forgive. Father and I were skipping stones when I was 5. I missed the pond, hit him in the ear with a big rock. It hurt. He laughed, I cried. He was born at 4:44 in the morning. I was born at 4:44 in the evening, night and day. Back when I knew him, he enjoyed whitewater rafting, Calvin and Hobbes comics, and drinking Chardonnay. He will die one day. I hope I will have healed before then, so his death won't have to be a relief. Instead, it can be sad, like I will have lost a part of someone I once long ago had loved. People must meet him and think he is soulful and funny, generous and kind, but really it must be hard to be broken like branches in a storm. Families are stained glass windows of saints in churches with a rock flung through, half shattered by the black sheep, the truth teller, who hurts them more than the perpetrator. Father builds tall fences, turns away from the mirror. Daughter sees counselors, wants to throw soup violently over the back porch for no apparent reason. I killed the dad in my novel, a decade before I even remembered what had happened to me. My subconscious picked up a gun and shot him in the chest repeatedly. It was helpful. Still, there is no peace. There are calm days, though, rubbing the bellies of purring wolves, laminating four-leaf clovers into bookmarks, and canning peaches for winter. I've heard I have to forgive him to be free. I've also heard centipedes have life partners. I wonder if both can be true. I've got one swear word in the manuscript, and I'm going to get it out of the way in the next poem, so I'm sorry, I don't want to jar anybody. This next poem is called My First Thug. Okay. I kissed my first thug at a rock concert, age 15, until a crowd surfer fell on our heads. He was high on ecstasy, had committed armed robbery, and shot a guy in the chest 4 times over $80. He said condom sex was like fucking an inner tube. I was a virgin, impressed with his metaphors and gun handling, blonde hair to the cheekbone, southern drawl and bare chest. I smoked his cigarettes and touched his back softly. We licked each other's earlobes. I gave him my phone number. He called and told me the stories I told you, and still went to church on Sundays, slept with crack whores, and got a dog stoned. We were going to meet up in a hotel. He said one day I would be famous and drive by in a limousine, and he would be under a bridge in a cardboard box waiting for a ride. All right, this next poem is called God is a Pirate. The doctor has no license, 1 kidney, and 2 big sad hands. They weep every time they touch me. My abdomen is hard as the piano's back. He points his fingers in a downward dive and presses into stone, hoping for music. But today, God is a pirate, and we must both walk the plank. Wind chimes. We sit in clinic chairs, spines curving inward like slices of cantaloupe, and look out easterly windows to the mud puddles, pines, and brawling tangles of wild blackberries. Ivies drip from their bags and down the long tubes into a crease at our elbow or a catheter in our chest. The doctor often searches our neck, wrists or feet for veins when they're dry, leathery, and sunken into the disappearing bodies that once promised us our youth. At age 20, we are now worn down like shoe treads, imagining the velvet hands of springtime will think of us tomorrow when they comb their fingers through faded meadows, remarking our absences from our own fields of work. From our own lines of poetry, we evaporate. Even the ocean licks its tongue over our footprints to help us believe we were never here to begin with. We become tiny enough to hide behind a grain of sand. Please, we murmur out the windows. Please, take our bones and make them into wind chimes after this is over. So at least a small corner of the mountain will know we lived here once and wanted to be heard. I was concerned I might start crying because I'd be so happy I'm well, but instead I'm kind of chuckling. Asking the sun. I am becoming that older person you taught yourself not to love. She is kind, forgiving, full of moss-swollen hills and a river clear as glass before it breaks open and cuts the delicate pieces of you into stars. For mounting on walls next to collages of all we want to summon in on the currents of red sand winds, on the elbows of fairy tale dragons with long eyelashes and curled tongues. I am becoming that older person inside of you that you cannot help but fall all over just to be near. The love you neglect to give yourself has been given to me. I do not steal, I only earn, knocking down castle walls that hold us apart from ourselves, asking the sun to melt shoelaces so my bare feet can remember the way it feels to stand on naked earth, heart ripped open, a makeshift megaphone for the birds. How are you guys doing so far? Sinking into this okay? Play with matches. I woke up this morning to Spanish moss hanging from the chandelier while I'd been asleep. Pepper vines had snuck in the back window, headed for the library, and scarlet larkspur gathered around to mourn your old shoes in the closet. The outside became curious of the inside. What do humans do in these houses? Downstairs, bushes of coyote mint found the light switch and terrorized circuitry like a club in Dublin. Hummingbirds sage-guarded the fireplace, while a cluster of trembling poppies tried to strike a match like a skinny lot of librarians having a go at a criminal record. And there I stood, scolding plants in my pajamas before 8 a.m. or a proper cup of coffee. Is this what happens to me without a dog or children? The wilderness invites itself in to play with matches, while I frantically decide which item of furniture I don't mind having covered in foliage, flowers, root shoots, and dirt, and renamed as the timeout chair. And I included this one because my mom loves it so much. I was going to just leave it out, but okay. It's called Your Absence. If I had known that would be the last time we'd ever see each other, I would have stayed longer. I would have thanked you more. I would have mentioned that you were the reason I left my place every late afternoon without fail. I'd walk up the hill past the old abandoned house where you'd wait for me to pass by and unfold your sweet perfume smell. I tuck myself into the thick overgrown brush where our courtship was secret and mutual, even if all I did was take from you. If I had known that would be the last time we'd ever see each other, I wouldn't have left you there for whoever it was to come along and saw you off at the roots, having no idea how much you were loved. I would have told you about my paintings and asked after your adolescence if it was true what Anais said, if the day came when the risk to remain tied as a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. I walked up the hill later than usual this evening, the thumbnail of the moon already out, the sky purple, and when I turned the bend to greet you in French and tell you about my day, you beautiful gardenias weren't there, half swallowed in the grasses I'd often considered to pull back from your eyes, so we could see each other better. I stopped in the middle of the road and it stung. Your absence. My heart hopped up into my throat to be held. I'm just human. I don't know where you go when you die, or that you might be looking down on me, wondering if I have any idea how much I was loved. inspired by nature and emotions, often sad emotions, because that's good for poets. Successful. Awkward ballerinas. Thank you all for being here. It's just so wonderful. In a quiet place, I tuck the words beneath my tongue. Such quiet places can feel me. I don't need to speak here. Where the light is indecipherably either dawn or dusk, the moment both wise and childlike, where the years of apprehension have finally stepped off their ledge, I watch the horizon's eye open, cold blue like bruised fruit to a new day. I feel my heart in this quiet place, beating like it intimately knows every tiny stitch that grew into the fabric of my soul. And somehow I begin to understand myself then. All the years I loved people, marooned on their own islands by choice, surrounded in a water they could never touch, surrounded by emotion that scared them onto their tippy toes. Others mistook them for awkward ballerinas, but my heart knew they were just shy children, hidden in the arms of grown gods, needing to be loved by a third party. And that's all of us, all us sweet little children on the inside. Pumpkin seed. One day, I will belong in the flesh of a peach, in the atom of a star, or on the scarred lips of a champion boxer. One day I will float away in a gondola, pass under a bridge of jade stone, and cast paper cranes to the water, like old receipts of things I never wanted to buy in the first place. Our art is a crumb for the birds, a small meal hidden from all that do not fly, a choice bit of memory, gem, and reinforced steel, wrapped in the husk of a pumpkin seed. My hand in yours. And tomorrow, when the sun rises, we will wake up on beds of beach nets with sand under our eyes and seashells in our hair, with salt on our broken lips and wild horses riding the ridges of our sturdy shoulders, wishing for mountain range. The seagulls will crown us forgiven of all the love we forgot to give ourselves when we lived in our nests of black tulips, laying eggs of nocturnal bone. And tomorrow, when the sun rises, the ocean will send up its sunken ships, like forgotten sons and daughters of mythology and Spanish gold. Then, as the horizon tilts to burgundy, I will put my hand in yours, and something will bloom from our touch, a red poppy, a lemon tree, or maybe a universe. So that's the first chapter. It was really wonderful to be able to carve some of these poems into mango wood sculptures that a friend of mine made on Maui. It was kind of taking it to the next level, kind of communing with the spirit of the mango wood and deciding, okay, what do you want on you? And then taking different pieces of different poems. And I love collaborating with other artists. It was a wonderful experience. Did you guys have any thoughts or questions after that first chapter? Or? It's good I don't start with this one. I'm sure y'all can think back to where you were born and how your childhood was like. And This is me going back to my roots. It's called Georgia. A white cactus flower opened on the windowsill, and a black scorpion watched from the ceiling as I came into the land of red clay, with the bloody palm of the earth opening to catch my infant arrival. I did not grow up here. I grew down here, down into the roots that spread like dark snakes to hold up a family tree no leaves could grow on and no fruit could bear. We took picnics to lakes, played ping pong, died young. All that time, the roots slithered around my bones, stretching my limbs into the cardinal directions with their forked tongues. The trees fed on me to grow thicker, stronger, and taller, then sized us all up to fit us later on. Coffins for kings and queens of their own bedtime stories, where it was safe to dream we could somehow survive the assassination of our innocence. I buried us all in an avalanche of rubies, the hardened blood of angel tears. Then I got up and walked away, somewhere north that didn't have lightning bugs, flowering dogwoods, or peaches to remind me of where I'd been. How's that for uplifting? So I don't ever really write political poems, though I do like to follow the current state of affairs in the world. And I think I'm sort of approaching this poem politically, but from an emotional place. It's called Veteran. I want to cradle you. I want to cradle and rock you back and forth in fields of clover and Scotch broom, on cliffs of sorrow, overlooking the burnt blue ocean that knows us by name. Adults are small and live through their own private holocausts quietly, with glossy eyes, polite shirts tucked in, and handkerchiefs neatly folded. I want to comb your hair, kiss your ears, and let it fall off your face. The trap place that guards you with its pointed iron gate, stolen off the fog-cloaked estate of a horror film. Forget what I want. You're a man of military time, quarry stone and emperor's lace. So I rock back and forth for the both of us, for the heart that beats its wings wildly in the clogged chimney of no escape. Whew. Right. To earth. Muscle, vein, and bone. Storm, sugar pine, and rib cage. Rose quartz, ash, and cello music. Mango sap, sapphire blood, and ginger lily. This is what I become without you, said the dark side of the moon to earth. This next one, I don't know if any of you are familiar with a band from Iceland called Sigur Rós. I love them, they're one of my favorites. And so I wrote this poem for the lead singer. They're fairly well known, and I emailed it to my friend who's worked with them. He's like, "Oh, I'll send it to them." And I was kind of surprised, but I don't know, it made me really happy. Anyways, he said, I'm worried about her. Maybe we should get her a new bike. That's what he had to say. So, anyways, this poem's called Your Music. I listened to your song and felt like I'd fallen off a bike while braking in the gravel and skidded across my heart instead of my knees. And the scrapes rode upward for my throat, upward for the words that could only find me sitting there stunned. Fingering the stripes of blood running from my chest is how I felt your music. and the redness of the ink of my body stuck to my palms and dazzled the sun. And I danced for you there in the gravel, covered in blood. That full moon in Scorpio, by the way. Let's try here. It's very nice and humid on me. Drink a lot more water. So I don't know if I'm allowed to have a favorite of one of my own poems, but I do. Is this next one. It's called Tell Me. I am at the edge again. This time, without the sun, or the birds, or the silver guardrail pounding moonlight into my branches. I've whittled down the last tree into a spoon, from which I plan to drink the ink of night from the eyeliner of Egyptian folklore. I will die Cleopatra at the tail of a century you've never tasted, that I have already lived in the bloody hollows of my mind. They say artists are mad, old-fashioned for crazy. They say all sorts of things. But who else has slayed the lion with a single drop of poetry? Who else has given the moon scarlet fever over their naked being? Tell me why I've been pinned down by the bearded irises and meadows flat as glass. Why I have been stung by the viper and live to walk on the elbows of someone else's dream. On garbage day, I'm sure we can all think back to breakups and how difficult they are. I wonder how elephants experience sadness. I wonder if wasps are as happy to have long legs as I am. I think about rocks too. I know they're heavy. Still, I wonder if they are hollow somewhere inside like teeth. Are they full of blood and nerves and know what it feels like to be alive? I also wonder how long it will take me to undo myself from you completely. I threw away the sheets, towels, lingerie, old flowers, and note. 2 elephant trinkets we got in a wedding. They are not sad though, because they are silver and shiny, and they will die together on garbage day, trunks intertwined in the silent and adoring presence of each other. I'm sorry, I'm not really that sorry, but I'm sort of sorry to kind of drag you guys through some heavy problems. This next one's called The Hours. I sling blades of grass between the teeth and ribs of time, break, bleed hours, run away with daylight, leave me lonely in the dark. Call my name from the black corners where water drowns cardinal directions. Like children, she will never be allowed to birth or love. Leave me directionless, threadbare, and the abyss past the mountain range, fumbling for golden pears broken open, leave me lonely in the dark. See, it's great. What's great, and you guys can tell, is I'm doing so much better these days that I can say that from the state that I'm in, and it's no longer tragic. So that's what makes me happy. We emerge from ribbed shadows, like white buffalo from storm, painted in the blood of our ancestors, free of lineage, trampling into a landscape of blank horizon to the rhythm of top-drawn skin smacking the bone. Tango used to be one of my favorite passions. This poem is called Tango Lover. We swoon dance floors, cluttered with the ghosts of dead cranes, begging for another drink of earth from the parched afterlife. When I die, the hourglass will collect the dust of my soul's travels. Lightning will break open my being with its butter knife, and pearls of blood will flow out from the center of our poems with the paper dragons, the river water, and the sap of our favorite mythologies. At least that's how I like to think of it. I was really depressed when I wrote this one because I was feeling like, sometimes you feel like you work so hard at what you do and then you have writer's block and then something's just got to kind of be thrown out on the page, so this is kind of got thrown out after a month of no writing, so it felt really good. It's called Naked Pages. The origin of the ashes came from my body back when I lived on earth. My lovers divided the fine human powder amongst each other and spread them in fields of red poppies, in a sea of paper lanterns, in flocks of hooded cranes. They mourned me in their own way, men with muscles and tattoos, men with guitars, acne scars, and lips that have French kissed the dark carnation. Oh yes, the mouth often knows what the heart desires. Nights were spent opening the naked pages and reading body language with our palms. Sad, death takes those who leap off cliffs with their arms spread out, wingless birds in dreams of flight, how they shrivel in the fire. Become dust for the hands of men to spread through golden fields of blood flowers and memory. That's the end of the second chapter. Does anyone have any thoughts or questions on that? Such a great audience. This last one is By Moon. Anchor. I am empress of the underworld. In the season of my birth, unzipping bone and flinging open its swinging doors, calling all wild horses and deviated ships back into the harbor of my pride open chest. You are circuitry, connecting switch to light bulb, bridge to city. Your umbilical cord replaces the telephone. I bury myself in the rich, dark soil and feel your roots reach for me, an anchor to your ship. I like to paint, and so I painted a huge red, angry painting. And this was the poem that I felt went with it. It was written in the same day. It's called Orion is Angry. The belt buckle slaps nearby constellations across the mouth. Orion is angry, loosening stars from their sockets like spent teeth. He watches us from the celestial equator to attach to the outcome and lashes at the closest thing, since we are busy locking ourselves indoors, murmuring to crickets and too far from reach. Crowbars and nightingales. You wake me knocking with your fists of cracked brass and slide tides of ochre moss beneath the door. Whether or not I answer, you come in picking locks with bobby pins from the heads of stars. Have to keep the hair back from their eyes so y'all remember they're there, you say upon entry. In galoshes, smile as right as rain. It's 2 a.m. and you're trouble. I don't offer tea, I roll over. But now all the moths see my mind as flame and move in like a single winged helmet, chasing me from the bed like science fiction. You laugh and put the kettle on the wood-burning stove, topped with orange peels. Shutters clack against sudden wind, and gutters drip rain from another life. It's gonna be a long night, you say with the severity of your Picasso lips, because you are a poem that has to get the weighted crowbars and nightingales off your chest and onto mine. I find it's very much like that. It's very much servant to the words at any and all hours. And it's great, but it's also, I think that's probably the closest I get to having kids, is like, which I'm sure it's an awful thing to compare it to, because kids is probably so much more to do. But I don't know, I feel really grateful to be able to be a writer and to be available to the poems that come in, because I don't just sit there and think, well, while I write, they write themselves. And then, of course, I have to do all the editing. John knows all the editing that's required and all in the writing world. Relentless, but I think what I love about poems is they kind of come out in a pure way. Like with us novels, you can spend years and years going crazy editing, and poetry's more forgiving. Adopt a giraffe. I want to have a secret life. Wait, I'm just saying one thing before I start this. Right after I wrote this, I got to go out and have the two things that I wanted in this poem, which was a motorcycle ride and chocolate cake, and that's something I never get. So, adopt a giraffe. I want to have a secret life nobody knows about but me. One in which I'm out late at night doing things I would never do. Like playing spin the bottle with Marcus Zussick and riding Appaloosa's bareback toward the northern star, high on chocolate cake. If I had a secret nighttime life, it would smell of gunpowder, rum and neroli, of coffee grinds, violets, and storm. At the place where the scents would collide, I dye my hair black, wear lacy gloves to my elbows, and drive a motorcycle. I would smoke hand-rolled cigarettes on the lip of the volcano, shower in stilettos, and adopt a giraffe. If I had a secret nighttime life, it would send its ravens to the railing of my lanai. I would wear their tears in a locket around my neck, and together we would party in a lighthouse, overlooking the Grand Pacific, overlooking the veils of our lost gods. For lovers only. This side of the Alpines, this side of the sea foam, this side of the page, where the words burn out like galaxies, untouched by telescope or human hand. This side is where I wait, for lovers only. The side of the alcove, the side of the dorsal fin, the breastplate, the opera stage, the side of the milk thistle, the lion's den, the dip in your collarbone holding court for me, I wait. To be unstitched from the stars, let down from hooks that pin me tonight, so we can fold ourselves into each other on this side of the bed. by lamplight. Ferns. Where orange groves meet fields of lava rock and mute swans fly overhead, I will always be yours. On the rim of the moment when I'm up for it, I will quietly walk away, blowing clouds of smoke behind me to shroud the direction of my vanishing. On the edge of the Earth's atmosphere, where satellites bloom open like marigolds, I will always wait for you to wake up and join me. We are so far from each other in the same bed, divided by the Great Wall of China and our own private hopes for ourselves. The sutures we've sewn between us to hold our dreams together have long since dissolved. We turn away from each other and curl inward like the tips of ferns, for there is no other solace. And it goes downhill from there. Into the wind. In an empty house, I sift through the bones of Thanksgiving turkey. I shower in the dark. In the bedroom, my mind paces the carpet threadbare. My eyes trace fallen shadows around the walls. I go outside to muted blue light, soft breaths falling from the open robe. I unwind the garden hose to overwater irises, my mind on other things, like spreading your ashes into the wind yesterday so you could run on home. I think that poem's kind of like my own loneliness, living alone and wanting to cremate it and let it into the wind so that I can no longer be lonely. This poem's called Laurel, and I wrote it for a dear friend. In the desert, where skulls of goats hung from barbed wire fences, where mica glinted from Pinon hillsides like foreign currency, and sunsets turned themselves inside out. There, we were poets with skinny necks and scars at our arms, held in fields of lions' manes, made of black velvet from the backside of prayer, a coffin, the wet edge of the moon. If we were a true love story for each other, it would end as it has, blooming from the bullet wound as separate flower heads, leaving the same stem thornless, soft gills that breathe out of water and find their own way. Without anger. How are you guys doing? All right? Okay, good. I will stay with you while the others depart into corridors darkening with fallen leaves. I will stay with you when the moon has no clouds to call solace and she is stripped naked against midnight blue, shucked clean and trembling. I will stay with you like the essence of a scar before it prints your skin with memory, before you know the thing you touch is burning, eager to lift you from dark waters and embed you in flame. I will stay with you, gentle, well-behaved, waiting for you to stand against night sky and face us unafraid. Shine your hammered light upon us, Empress, in your necklace of lion's teeth. Yank the page from beneath the words. I will stay with you while they tremble there against midnight blue, shucked clean and terrified to be suspended without anchor and suddenly free. poems left to go. This one's called Thorough Execution. And it's probably one of the most therapeutic poems I've written. And it came out kind of like a strike of lightning. And I've named the book after it. Thorough Execution. Tonight the wind rebels against what it cannot describe, to the palm fronds it molests with angry fingers. Yes, something happened to the wind as a child, and tonight the adult remembers through the language of storm and uprooted trees. Purple lightning flicks its violent whip, and thunder pounds like giants' feet. The wind snaps necks of branches and thrusts them into power lines, imagining they're the bones of its father. Light is disabled from reaching every city, and so the humans will sit in darkness or light candles and watch the shadows on their walls drift apart like continents that once, long ago, knew they belonged together. And the wind outside will continue to claw and rake, bleat and howl until all its bones are broken. But just for tonight, just for tonight. Tomorrow the wind will abandon the war-torn body of its sorrow with a phantom chest, lifting black leaves up from gutters and old newspapers from hidden alleys, and together they will all drift away like solitary wings on the bodies of dreams that used to fly in pairs. Locksmith. You know me well enough by now. I will never tire of the woods, the ocean, or the moon on my page. You must figure we are all old friends. Maybe we went to the same school, though it had to have been segregated, with trees on the left and water on the right. I sat between them. The moon stood up front and taught us about poetry against the blackboard of the sky. We were all good students. It was only the things that lived inside of us that got in the way. Animals came out of the woods, and mermen came out of the ocean, and they circled me with their beady eyes, asking to pull the dark forces from my body and surrender them to teacher. Funny that I would arc my back and resist. I was afraid of what was locked in there, that I might terrify the night by showing it a doorway into itself. I did not know then that the moon is many things besides a poetry teacher. It is a ringmaster, a doorknob, a locksmith for all locked things. And it was as though our classroom suddenly became holy, like a cathedral, when the light of the moon decided to pierce me. Black bats with steel tongues and tides of centipedes came out from their hiding places, and the ocean and the woods took them in, for they were not mine to bear. This is the final poem. It's called Pollinate the Stars. Mobster dreams float on the surface of last night's rain, soggy backs to the sun. Underwater creatures suckle the tips of their shoelaces and golden crosses where Jesus hangs, watching seaweed strangle out the stars. I wake up in a pool of sweat that smells of sugar pine and tuberose. I wake up with criminals cleansed from my psyche and an empty mind that snuck from my head to nestle in my hands like a baby dove, white, gentle, and blinking. I will feed it pearls of ink today in the color of midnight blue. I will make a nest for it from torn books of poetry, the whisper of candlelight, balanced on the ivory skull of a priest's departed mother. Tomorrow I will crush beach seashells into fine powder and blow it from my palms, go off into the world new dreams and pollinate the stars.
Is there any pleasure in your poems? Is this the redemption, the expression of your suffering? Are you suffering for us?
God, wouldn't that be nice?
For your audience?
I think that's a great question, Joseph. I think the poetry helped me purge the darkness. Yeah. Is that enough of an answer? Does that work?
It works.
Okay, I mean it's short and simple, but.
Well, when you read it, does it take you back in there, or does it?
I try to go back in there because then I can tap more into the emotion of the poem. But it's funny because I don't feel like I sink into it as far as I used to. So I think that's really healthy.
Is there a pleasure now in reading?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, definitely,
Yeah.
because I've spent so much of my life at home writing, and I want nothing more than to be able to share it with other people, because I know that we all feel so deeply, and I feel like I touch on some topics that are personal and universal to all of us, and I hope in a way it's kind of like a great feast of a meal that I'm offering your ears. You can enjoy.
I have another one more question.
Of course.
When you're letting these poems come through you, are they coming through you, or must you suffer that experience or relive it when you're?
I only have to suffer and relive experiences when I'm writing memoir. So poetry is really nice that way. Yeah, so they're
Releasing.
just, yeah, definitely
Releasing.
releasing. It again, it's like an energy that moves through you, kind of like the way the tears just move through you, and then, oh, thank you, now that's done with. Kind of like, same with the poetry. So I'm lucky that that's what I can use instead of medication to get through a feeling. But yeah, there's no real suffering with the poems. They're more helpers than anything. Yeah. Thank you. John?
You're so quiet when you do these poems. But I've also seen a video of you rapping.
Yeah.
Do you still rap?
It's, I'll tell you a little bit about that. When I was bedridden living with my mom, because I lived here for 4 years, 19 through 23, and I conjured up this character, Lava, because I was so angry, and I didn't know where to put the anger, and it was kind of an energy that helped me get through my illness. So I was Lava for 9 years. And then one night after a poetry slam, I went home and I went to bed and I thought, I'll never be Lava again. And it was so great because I'd done the real cycle of Lava, going from feeling dormant inside of a volcano, feeling like the mountain blood, to exploding, and then seeing how dry and dark and barren lava really is, and just rising up from that is a new thing. So I don't really do that anymore, even though I love rapping and I miss it. But the thing that it did for me was that it gave me the opportunity to feel heard. Like one night I went home and I was like, oh, I've been heard now after 9 years. I know that in our teenage years that we all need to be heard, and oftentimes we're not. And so it was just an aggressive thing I needed to do for a while.